And good morning yet again. Firstly, I just want to ask for everyone's help and support by hitting that subscribe button and go down to the notifications and select all notifications. That way, when I release a video or do a live stream, you're notified straight away. And also, if people could leave a comment, you don't have to support what I say. Any type of comment would be good. It just helps with the analytics and algorithms with YouTube, so it gets out there to more people. But the reason for today's live stream, you might remember last week when I had a whinge about Dr. George Talopoulos putting up a cartoon which showed a person with a disability sitting on a toilet. Off to one side was a support worker with toilet paper in hand, and on the other side was a stern-looking woman with a clipboard with auditor written on it. Now, I'm not the only one that has these concerns regarding Dr. George Talopoulos. There's quite a few out there. And one of those people actually found the cartoon that I was referring to last week and sent it to me. And can you please show that now, Chris? This is the actual cartoon he put up and claimed that support workers are nothing more than bum wipers. That was his comment with this cartoon. This is beyond inappropriate. It's disgraceful. It should never have happened. It's in bad taste and poor judgment, in my opinion. It doesn't show a person with a disability in a positive light as a valued member of the community and one who can participate in the community activities. And it also shows an extreme disrespect for support workers. There are a lot of fantastic support workers out there, and there are a minority who are extremely bad, as was shown on the 60 Minutes program a week or two ago, where a woman with a disability, a support worker spat into her mouth. Now, there's an investigation into that case, so I'm not going to harp on about that young woman's encounter with those bad support workers. But overall, to demean and disrespect support workers when a lot of these support workers are dedicated to what they do. They're dedicated to improving people with disabilities' lives, getting this out in the community and showing this in a positive light. And from someone who's on the IAC, which is the Independent Advisory Council to the NDIA, and the chairperson of the EAC, which is Every Australian Counts, and as a member of the Victorian Access Committee. It's extremely bad judgment. It is a really poor thing to do by Dr. George Talopoulos. For someone who has a PhD in psychology, he certainly doesn't show any empathy, equity, or equality in his comments. Now, he put this post up because he's opposed to a national register of support workers, especially those independent support workers, which I think is a great idea. And now let's face it, the funding we receive from the NDIS comes from taxpayers, and every taxpayer has the right to know where their money is going, what it's doing, how it's being used, and the outcomes. And this can only be achieved through a national register of independent support workers. There's no accountability. And that's what we need. We need transparency and accountability in our support workers. I know of a case where a support worker in Victoria was charged with abuse. So they did their time, went through their probation, legally changed their name, moved to Queensland, and has now began another career as a support worker. They did a police check and gave them their new name. And of course, as it's a new name, there was no criminal record. So, what should a national registry of independent support workers have? There should be a police and working with children's check. And no, George, it doesn't mean you're a child. You may act and behave like one sometimes, but a working with children's check is different from a normal police check. It's more in depth because there's a lot more restrictions placed on people who work with children. There should be first aid and CPR qualifications. They should have the correct insurances. They should be required to adhere to the NDIA's code of conduct. And if they're working with medications, then they need to have those qualifications as well, as the support workers do who are employed through a service provider. Support workers who work through a service provider, if they're working with medications or food handling or personal care, like using or hoisting a person in and out of bed and to and from the bathroom, are required to have qualifications that they know how to use these things in a safe manner. Now, all these things do not take away a person with a disability right to choose who they want as a support worker. They can choose whoever they want. It doesn't remove that choice, that freedom of choice. It just ensures that those people they choose from have the right qualification and police check and insurances and first aid, just the basic things that all support workers need to have, whether they're independent or they work through a service provider. Now, this cartoon was put up because George Telporis doesn't want a national register of support workers. He wants, as he stated in LinkedIn, he wants to choose his own support workers and train them on the job. Now, I'm totally blind. I have no light perception whatsoever. But from what I've been told, George has a significant disability and he needs a lot of care, a lot of support. Now, if he's choking on food and the person doesn't have first aid CPR, he's not going to be able to instruct them on what to do. If he has a seizure, anyone who has a seizure and they have a new support worker and they're training them on the job themselves, they may not know what to do in that circumstance. Now, I ask all those sighted people to look at that cartoon. Does it show that person with a disability in a positive light? And is it disrespectful to the support worker standing there with a toilet paper in his hand and being referred to as a bum wiper? It's extremely poor judgment, bad taste, inappropriate, disgraceful behaviour from someone who's supposed to be a representative to people with disabilities. Well, I'm sure as hell he's not representing my views and opinions, representing my disabilities, representing me in a positive manner. And I'm not the only one. There's a growing community out there, especially on LinkedIn and social platforms, that are not happy with the behaviour and the attitude from George Telporis, IAC and chair of the EAC and a member of the Victorian Government Access Committee. I've written to Bill Shorten, and I've written to the board members of the EAC, Every Australian Counts, asking for the immediate and permanent removal of George Terralopoulos from his positions on the IAC and the EAC. I don't know what else I can say. He is not a representative of people with disabilities, because if you go into his LinkedIn account, it's always my freedom of choice, my opinions, my rights. Yes, you have your own freedom of choice. Yes, you have your own views and opinions. Yes, you have rights, George. But when you're putting yourself out there as a representative on the IAC and the EAC and deliberately scare and distress people with your scare tactics, you should be removed from those positions. You're not doing your job. You're not a representative. I've also sent a link to Bill Shorten and to the EAC board members for this video, because I want to see them to see this cartoon. And I want them to know there are a lot of people out there on LinkedIn and other social platforms who are not happy with the behaviour and attitude of George Terralopoulos. They want him gone. The only difference is I'm the one that's speaking up and speaking out. If I don't, who else is going to do it? George, you're a bad representative. If you don't step down, Bill Shorten and the EAC board members should remove you straight away. It's disgraceful. I mean, that cartoon does nothing to enhance the life of a person with a disability and to show support workers in a positive light. Because without support workers, where would a lot of us be? We would be back to what it was before the NDIA was introduced. We'd be at home relying on family or friends. That's it. That was the life before the NDIA. We relied on family and friends to help us out and do things for us. I don't want to go backwards. I want to move forwards. And I believe every other person with a disability and every other support worker wants the same thing. To be valued and respected, not be disrespected and dismissed because you have your own personal views and opinions that don't help anyone else with a disability. It's disgraceful. So Bill Shorten and the board members of the EAC, please remove George Terralopoulos from his positions. He does not deserve to be there, in my opinion. He's not a representative. Go through his LinkedIn accounts and his social media platforms. Go on Twitter, or it's now X, and look up Dr. George Terralopoulos, the Crip, and see what he's been putting up. Is that representing people with disabilities? Is that asking people with disabilities their opinions without having a loaded question? You can ask a question, George, without scaring people. Without trying to get people onto your way of thinking. A true representative listens and ask questions that people can answer from their own lived experiences, not by scaring them into action under your way of thinking. It's not appropriate. A national register of independent support, all support workers, including independent support workers, is absolutely essential for transparency, accountability, and to assure all the taxpayers that are providing this funding that it's being used for what it's supposed to be used for. We can't just put a wall up and say, I want to use my funding for what I want, and I shouldn't have to account for it. That's not how it works. No government, local, state, or federal, will hand out money without knowing what it's for, how it's going to be used, what the outcomes are. It's never happened, and it will never happen. No, that's. Is there any comments or anything, Chris? Sorry. Okay. Well, I might leave it there. I want everyone who's sighted to look at that picture. And please send me comments. My email is blindadvocate007@gmail.com. Or go to the comment section in YouTube and leave a comment there. Let me know what you think. You don't have to agree with what I said. You can be totally opposed to what I just said and have the complete opposite views. I don't care. I don't mind. Anyway, we'll end it there. Thanks, please, Chris. Well, that's my spiel for this week. I just hope Bill Shorten and the EAC board members get rid of this bullfed. Okay, all right. Thanks, Chris.